Welcome to the Good News Mama podcast, a place to get in touch with other mamas, share the load, and know the Lord. Here we aim to lift each other up in the good news of Jesus and the laughter that comes with motherhood. We are a community of mamas just trying to keep the main thing the main thing. I'm your host, Lynn Carter, and each time you tune in, I pray you are encouraged and that you leave challenged and breathe a sigh of relief that you are understood. We were not meant to do life alone, Mama. Thanks for joining in. Let's do this and let's share the good news. Hey, Mamas. I'm so excited you're here. I always say that I'm so excited, but I am because I always have somebody that I can't wait for you to hear. So thanks for joining me today on this episode. I've got Erin Pratt with me. She actually is of Simply Carolina Ivory, and she is being very open and honest about her struggle with infertility. And it's one of those subjects that is coming in on the heels of Infertility Awareness Week. And her story was so real that she shared online. I just wanted to invite her to the podcast and take it a step further. So Erin goes into her struggle, her and her husband's emotions and mindset through the process of seeking fertility treatments and leading to the ultimate adoption of their oldest son and son that was born shortly thereafter without infertility treatment. So I don't want to spoil the whole episode, but I do want you to know that this is a trigger warning for emotional things that come with infertility, and I want you guys to really be blessed by this. So please understand that my heart was just to share with mamas that have been going through this journey. I don't have experience in this, and Erin just does a beautiful job of laying it out there, so open and so real, and in a way that I pray would just bring you a blessing and comfort and encouragement if you walk down this road yourself. So here we go, mamas. Enjoy Erin Pratt on the podcast. Thank you, Erin, for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Me too, girl. It was good catching up just before we hit record because for those listening to the podcast, Erin and I went to high school together and really had not come across each other until maybe in the past year on social media. So it was really fun catching up with her. And I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking about such a sensitive topic. I did not even realize until scrolling through social media a couple weeks ago that it was Infertility Awareness Week. And you shared a post that really just stopped me in my tracks. And I literally read it and had to reread it. And I just felt just such a tugging in my heart to talk to you about it if you were willing to. And so I just wanted you to first off, just say who you are and just share with us your passion and everything. And then we can get into kind of the behind the scenes of what you experienced. And maybe you can give us some ideas about how to be there and support a sister that might be going through this, or maybe somebody that's listening to this that's actually in the middle of this right now, that they could get words of wisdom from you. So
yes, of course. So, my name's Erin. I have been married to my college sweetheart for almost 13 years now. And we have two little boys, a 5-year-old whose name is Logan and a 3-year-old who his name is Davis. On paper, Logan is my adopted child and Davis is my biological child. We live in South Carolina. I've been working for Charlotte for a good long while. I'm an engineer for them. So I have a very busy and productive life is what I tell people. And then during the nighttime, I run Simply Carolina Ivory blog, and it's just a blog where I just try to help mamas. You know, we love the title of being mom. We love the title of being wife, but sometimes we lose ourselves. And so I'm all about finding our own joy. And because I'm a huge believer, if we have our own joy, we're more present in our relationships with our spouses. We're showing our kids, hey, you know, you have a dream, go for that dream. Don't be scared. Don't let nothing hold you back. So that's kind of the premises of that. And then on there, I do share about my infertility journey that I have or had. And then I also share about our adoption as well. So I guess I'll just go ahead and jump in and chat.
And I very much am encouraged by your feed and your stories that you post. And so much of what you post is so relatable because your boys are about the same age as my boys. And it's cray cray. Okay. It's just, let's call it what it is. It's a beautiful topsy-turvy mess that you're just like looking at, and you're just like, it's good, but it's crazy. And you just want to embrace it, and then you want to scream at it, and then you want to kiss it, and then you want to put it to bed. And so anyway, I just thank you for being real and showing those real moments instead of just the nice glossed over, how Instagram and social media can be. So I just want to put that out there.
It's too perfect. I think sometimes we show the pretty, and we have to show the ugly to make it. Well, it's not ugly, but we have to show the chaos to make everybody feel like, you know what?
Yes,
we are okay. We all go through it. So
yes, girl. Yes. So you said that you and Hunter are married now for 13 years. When did you guys decide that you wanted to start having kids into your marriage, and how old were you and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So we actually, I guess a lot of people actually thought we were kind of old when we were starting to want to have kids, which was right at 30, which to me is not old.
That was me too. No.
I was like, I'm not old. But we wanted to spend a good 5 years. Just honestly, we wanted to be selfish. We wanted to go travel and do whatever we wanted to do on our schedule. And looking back at it, I can say it was like the best thing that we did for us, because we really do cherish that time. And it kind of set the foundation for what we want to do. Even when we have a family, we are like, well, we still want to have a relationship with each other. We still want to travel with each other, which we do. We've gone on a few trips by ourselves, and it was without kids, and it was wonderful. Nice. So I'm a huge believer in doing that. So we tried to start having kids around we were 30, or a little before 30. And it wasn't going as smoothly as what we planned. And the doctor says, we're just going to go ahead and send you over to an infertility doctor, because, they're just going to go ahead and determine what's wrong. So going in there, we thought, okay, perfect. They're going to tell me something's wrong with me. I can take a pill or whatever it needs to be. And we go. We walk in there, had the most amazing doctor, and he says, there's nothing wrong with you. You're quote, quote, textbook perfect.
Wow.
And Hunter was textbook perfect. And it's like,
now, how long had y'all been trying at this point, and what kind of led that doctor to send you over there?
So we actually were trying for like 6 months, and he kind of had that term, well, in a few years, you're going to be old. That old word's awful.
Girl. And it's not. Oh my gosh. I had Brooks at 30. Okay. And I definitely did not feel old. And I'm right there with you. So you keep on going, girl. You won't hear any complaints from me, because that is not old.
No, not at all. And so, so, I mean, it was a little shocking, because we were in a doctor's office that we didn't plan to be in. And then we hear the news that we didn't plan to hear. And so they were like, well, we're just going to go ahead and start treatments. And we're like, okay. Like, I think we were just, I'll be honest, I was just so desperate at that point. Like, I'm like, I want something. And everybody around me obviously were having kids, which is great. Yeah. But no one was having problems.
And it kind of magnifies what you're going through, because you're the only one not having kids and wanting kids, and
and everything. I mean, it's just like everything gets triggered. Yeah. And so we ended up doing 2 rounds of an IUI, which it's a less aggressive. I'll say it's less aggressive, and it just didn't take it all. Like, I didn't get pregnant at all. Mm-hmm. And so the doctor says, typically we make you do 3 of these before we make you start doing IVF. And they said, since you're quote, quote, perfect, we're just going to go ahead and do IVF. And in my mind, I was like, oh, well, this will work. IVF is going to work. Uh-huh. And before we started doing everything, Hunter said to me, I need to know that you are okay with us not having kids. Because he says, what if these don't work? And he says, I need to know you mentally will be fine. And when he said that to me, I was not fine. I said,
Right.
why would you say that? Why would we not have kids? And,
Yeah.
and finally he sat down and explained it to me. He says, I need to know that you and I are enough for you. And it kind of
Oh.
dawned on me. I'm like, oh, I get what he's telling me. He's trying to
Mm-hmm.
say, like, you're just not with me for kids, and I get that. So
Yes, just like a man. You're just not using me for my body, right? You still love me.
you still want me, right? And
Oh,
so
that's so sweet, though.
it really was. And I mean, when he first told me that, I was really mad at him. I was like,
Yeah.
why would you ever say that to me? And then once he started explaining himself, I said, oh, yes. I said, of course, I want to be with you. I'm not going to leave you if we
All
can't
right.
have kids, we're together.
Right.
So we started that whole IVF thing, and it just tears up your body. I mean,
Girl.
it was like an emotional roller coaster. I couldn't fit into half my pants because I was so swollen. I was miserable. I just did not enjoy it because you're just like blowing your body up with all these hormones.
Right.
And I mean, it was like we were like a time bomb getting ready to go off. I couldn't watch anything sad on TV because I would just lose
trigger.
it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was awful. And I'm not normally like that. And so of course, like Hunter's like walking around on eggshells, and thinking back on it, I feel awful that it was like that. But we went to, so I'm doing all that, and Hunter's having to help me take shots. I'm putting shots in my stomach, up on my lower back, everything. And we go in to do our egg retrieval. So they have to give you anesthesia for that. And I'll just never forget, they wouldn't let him stay with me. And I just remember sitting in the room crying because I was scared. Yeah. And before I walked in the room, they let him come and give me a hug. And I just remember that like it was yesterday. And it was just so sweet. And I could tell he was worried about me, which Hunter's a very laid back person. And so for him to show emotion, I'm like, oh gosh, something's going to happen to me, isn't it? And so we had a successful egg retrieval. We ended up having 3 embryos, which was great. I was happy with that. So the next step was we went to implant 2 of them, and I got pregnant, which was great. The procedure worked, but then shortly after I miscarried the twins. And I was very devastated. I did not expect that because I was so convinced everything was going to work. That one was really tough. But then we kind of went in it going, well, we got one more embryo. We'll do it one more time. We can do this. And the exact same thing happened again. I got pregnant and I shortly miscarried, which that happened on Hunter's 30th birthday. So Hunter's he's a little less than half a year younger than me. And it happened on his 30th birthday. And I felt awful. And I mean, I was just miserable at that point. Like I just shut down. I said, I felt bad because like my body couldn't do anything, and, I'm so thankful during that whole process. I did have Hunter. Like I said, I did not have that many friends who really understood what I was going through because none of them were doing it or had to go through it, which is great for them.
But not great for you. Right. And
right.
It made me wonder, when you're talking about this, just kind of, you mentioned how you didn't feel great about yourself and what your body wasn't doing and that sort of thing. And just thinking about how did you handle the feelings? I mean, I'm sure there was probably some shame associated with it and blaming yourself as if you had anything to do with it, which you don't. And, where did you turn? What did you have any online support groups? Did you, turn to the Lord? I mean, what was it like trying to cope with that and with that loss? What did you do?
Honestly, because I didn't really go to anybody. I had a very, very small group of friends who I felt I could go to they did not know they didn't understand everything, but they just at least let me. If I just want to cry, let me cry. They didn't try to fix the problem. Obviously they couldn't. But one thing that Hunter and I constantly kept going back to is he kept saying to me, which I believe, God wasn't doing this to me to be mean to me. He wasn't doing it to be mean. And looking back at everything, if I could go back to myself at that point, I would say, it's your light. God's going to put us on this journey, and your light at the end of the tunnel might not be what you think it is. It might be something else. And for us, the light at the end of the tunnel actually was not for us to get pregnant through all this. It was actually for us to go adopt and get Logan. Yeah. And it took us some time to think through on that. And then finally one day we both stepped back and we were like, oh my gosh, like our life really is Jeremiah 29 here. Like, this is it. And the piece in there, that the verse that when we kept reading it over and over again, is we kept saying how it says, do no harm. Mm-hmm. So he's not doing anything to harm us. And I love like reading different verses, but taking phrases out. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what that means. And that just stuck out. Like, he wasn't doing this to harm me. He was not at all. And I do believe to my core, God doesn't put us through these things to make us miserable. Right. It's not like that at all. And so that kind of was honestly my saving grace during a lot of it. And like I said, thank God I had Hunter there. He tried to relate to me as much as possible and my friends, but they're like looking outside, not that many people talked about it. And kind of like you think about our parents' generation. Yeah. That was not a subject that was talked about. And even with our parents' generation, adoption was not a subject you talked about. Right. And so you couldn't really go that route. Like, not that I couldn't talk to my parents, but they couldn't offer anything, and they felt helpless at that point. So then I felt awful. And so I feel like now people are talking about it and getting the word out. They say like 1 in 8 women do struggle with infertility. And, some days sometimes I'm like, I bet you that's more. I bet it's more because the word is getting out more. Mm-hmm. People, and so, even though I didn't have great support, that's one thing why I'm so vocal about it now, is because at least want other people know, like, you're not alone. You are going to feel alone, and that's okay. That's okay. We all feel alone, but you're not, so.
Right. And I'm sure there's more support groups and things like that now, online and ways to reach out. But I was wondering, in your case, you wanted support, you wanted somebody to be there, you wanted to talk about it, but didn't really know who or how to talk to. And I understand that everybody processes things differently and even grief differently, like grieving the loss of your babies. And what would you say to the mama listening to this? And they've got a friend going through infertility treatments. It's maybe not necessarily them, but their friend, or they're in a position where they can be supportive. I'm sure there was probably times where people were well-meaning and trying to say things to encourage you, but it probably didn't come across that way. It was actually more hurtful than helpful. Yeah. And, it's kind of one of those things that sometimes people just don't really know what to say. And when they open their mouth, and I'm 100% guilty of this, I literally should just stick my foot in it, because like the wrong thing comes out. I'm like, I'm so sorry. That is not what I meant. And so did you have a specific thing that comes to mind where you're like, if somebody had just done this for me, or if they could have just not said something like this, and that, any examples or things like that to try to help a mom that's trying to be supportive?
Yes. The one that I heard quite a bit, and it's actually kind of sad to think that I heard this quite a bit, was, it's okay. You're young. It'll happen. Just relax. Yeah. You had a miscarriage. I'm sorry. But at least it was early. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like
that means anything less to know that you're going to be a mama, and you are a mama, you have a baby inside of you. And then, regardless of what point it was. And it's some of that sounds a little like toxic positivity, like a
Yes,
little.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I always could tell when people would say stuff like that to me, they were very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And because they felt obligated to say something.
Yeah.
And the group of girls that I did hang out with during all this time, I mean, it wasn't that they didn't communicate to me, but they just kind of said, if you need me, you tell me. And for some reason, that worked with me. I do know there's some of us who aren't good at, who cannot communicate that very well. And they just need somebody to say, I'm just want to check in on you. How are you doing? Because eventually women will open up about how they're doing. But the part that, I always felt like in when I've talked to other women who have gone through infertility is like not to nag them, like let them, because when you're taking those meds, like literally, I'm not kidding. I had post-it notes on my mirror and I had to write down times as to when I had to take them because they have to be on time. So if you want to go out to dinner, you better either plan around that time or you have to take your meds with you and hightail it to the bathroom and give yourself the shots on time. And so like you have so much things to think about that, it's like, I can't think about what I need to tell everybody.
Right.
And so just knowing that you're available to somebody who's going through fertility is so important. And honestly, being honest with them and say, I don't know what to say, but just know that I'm here. And I think that's with a lot of people who go through a lot of different struggles. We always don't. I'm the same way. You never know what to say, and so sometimes just saying, I'm here for you. I love you. I'm praying for you.
Yes.
I just don't know what you want me to say. And, and that goes a long way with people in general for anything. That goes such a long way. Yeah. So that's probably the best advice I can give anybody. If you have somebody just let them know you're there.
Yeah. That they can come available to you. Yeah. Yes, on their time and not feel like they have to say a certain thing or, that is so good. That is so good. It reminds me of this, children's book. Do you do Imagination Library with your kids? Have you heard of that? No, oh my gosh, girl. Aren't your kids under 5? You said they're 3 and 5?
Yes.
Okay, everybody listening to this, go online right now. It's Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. They give your child, you sign up your kids based on their age. They get a book every single month until they turn 5. Like from birth all the way up. So I don't remember when we found out about it, but we love getting, which Brooks doesn't get books anymore because he's 6, but Wade and Trent still get their books. And so it's so fun each month that they get a book. And there's somebody in your area that sponsors, generally they sponsor like out of a local area, but it's all under Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So it's really cool. Why I'm bringing this up is because exactly what you're talking about with like how to be supportive and how to be there for somebody looks different in different circumstances. Yep. And one of the books that Wade got, it was called The Rabbit Listened. And it was about this little boy that had built this beautiful castle of blocks. And then something bad happened and they all fell down. And then all these different animals come to the little boy and they're like basically trying to make the little boy feel better in their own way. Like one of them is like, let's get mad about it. One of them's like, let's tear down someone else's. And one is like, oh, let's just clean it up and throw it away. And so they're trying to do all these little things. And then at the very end, this little rabbit just comes in and he just sits right nestled up next to that little boy. And he doesn't do anything. And he just sits there. And for a while, the little boy didn't notice it. But then after a little bit, it's like that little just presence of that friend and that confidant just let him open up and it let him go through all those different grieving things. And he literally then was able to go through all the anger and frustration. And then finally at the very end, he was able to say that I want to build it again, or I want to do it again, and had like come to that healing moment kind of thing. And so that was in the back of my mind when you were talking, because we had an older gentleman at church that shared something similar where when he was in his lowest of lows and had his son on his deathbed to, I think it was a form of cancer or a tumor, like there was nothing anybody could say, but he would just have a couple of friends that would just come in there and just sit in the same room as him and just hold space and just pray, like not even talking to him. And then when it was time to go, they would just leave. And that was it. But it was like basically just somebody's in your corner, somebody's there for you. And that to me is what you were saying, that like you didn't necessarily want to hear anything. It just wanted them to know, you wanted to know that they were there for you, and that was good enough, and that you could come to them with your words at your time. So that was really good. That was a good way to put that, to make make us understand, because I feel like we all think we're not doing anything if we don't say something, if we don't like have the right words, and like it's our job to fix it, and that's not even the case.
Well, I always think it's human nature too. Like we always want to fix, our loved ones' problems, and we always want to take their pain away, and we always want to do that. And I think that does come from a loving place. But there's just sometimes some things that, you just can't. And, just being there, just knowing that you were there for me and that you love me and you were supporting me.
Exactly.
I will remember that the rest of my life. Type of
exactly.
Thing.
Yes, girl. I know, we talked about what you would say to the mom that is trying to be supportive to a friend going through infertility. What would you say to the mom right now who's been through infertility, who's had these issues, who's maybe in your case, it sounds like you went through a couple of different rounds, a couple of different ways, and then you decided that was enough, and that's what led you to adoption at that point. How would you, I don't know, what would you say to that mom that's right in the middle of it, right where you were right now?
Yeah. No, for that one mom, and like I said, if I could go back, I would not change anything that I've done. I would say don't have any regrets. So one thing that the doctor said I had to do was I had to relax and take days off of work and literally lay in bed and don't do anything. That was a struggle for me. I had a really hard time. But why I'm saying that is that you need to, when you're going through that whole process, when it's all said and done, you don't want to look back and go, I wish I did A, B, C, D. I wish I did this. Like, tell yourself, it's okay to have limits when you're going through these. Like, when we were when we were having our second miscarriage, the doctor still wanted me to take some of the meds. And I hope I won't start crying, because it was one of those moments that was very emotional for me. And I do think it was very emotional for Hunter as well to see me get like this. But we were in the bathroom and he was having to give me one of my shots because I couldn't do it myself. And I just sat there and I broke down crying. And I said to him, I am so sorry. I've hit a wall. And I said, I can't get past this wall. I can't do this anymore to myself. I've hit my limit. And I said, I'm sorry if I let you down. It's not my intentions, but I have hit my limit on this. And I do feel he respected me for that, because like I said, it does so much to you mentally and physically that you do have to almost, I hate to say plan it, but you do have to look at it big picture and identify the spots where you say, you know what, if this happens, I'm not doing that, and each of us are very different. I have a friend of an acquaintance where she's gone through 5 rounds of IVF.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. And for her, that is the only option. They have no desire to adopt. They have no desire to do anything else. And that's fine, and so I always just tell people, like, know what your limits are and don't have any regrets on it, because you don't want to be 2 years down the road going, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I did do this. Right. So that to me is very, very important. And I also would tell the lady who's going through it right now, please know that, as I mentioned earlier, your end of your tunnel might not be that baby. You might not have that baby from there. And there might be something else waiting for you that's just as amazing and just as wonderful.
Yeah.
And so, and that's hard. I'm going to be honest with you. It's very hard to swallow that. It really is, because you just think, I'm doing all of this. I'm paying all of this money. Like, you do have to put that out there. Like, for us, insurance paid $0.
Wow.
Because I was, quote, undetermined, that awful word. And so, you know, it is financially expensive. Can't deny that. But, you know, you just have to come to terms with the results might not work out the way you want them to, but don't give up, because there's something else that might be there as well that's just as wonderful. Which is hard to swallow. It is definitely very hard to swallow. Girl. Very hard, because that could be anybody, you know.
Yes. Any mama listening to that, whether they're going through infertility or not, can know that some things are just hard to swallow, but there is a reason. Then, speaking of that light at the end of the tunnel, I could do a whole separate episode on adoption, but how did you come about? Like you said, that it was kind of in both of your hearts, you and Hunter together wanting to adopt, and just share with us a little bit about your story when you adopted Logan, kind of what led up to those events or that process. And then later on, how Davis came into your family.
Yeah. So, Hunter and I 100% believe that, you know, even though, yes, we have 3 heaven babies, we know we will see our heaven babies again. We believe God really needed us to go through that to get to Logan. I always tell everybody that that Hunter and I had, it almost seemed too perfect. Like, everything seemed to work out just right to adopt Logan.
Wow.
And which even tells us, like, this was what we were submit to do. Like, we feel so confident in that.
Wow.
And we always tell people, you want to see God work, it's right here. Well, both my kids, everybody's kids, but you go, this was something. When we stopped doing our infertility treatments, that Halloween, Hunter and I went to go interview our agency, because we wanted to interview different agencies, because we had like a set of priorities that we needed them to meet for us. And like, for example, you know, we need to know that they're going to sit there and support the birth mom. And in South Carolina, the state is very adoptive parent friendly. And so, because we knew that, we wanted to make sure there was going to be support for her when it was all said and done. So the agency we found was that. So we went in on Halloween that year. The following Halloween, Logan was already in our house for 3 months.
Wow.
So when I tell you it flew by, we actually got selected by a birth mom, and she picked 3 families, and she says, can you please write me a letter? And so just to kind of like introduce yourself a little bit more, that kind of stuff, which is so nerve-wracking if you think about it, you know.
Like, what do I say in this letter to make sure I get this baby and don't offend this mama, but at the same time be myself? And
oh my gosh, it's like, oh, I got to brag about myself, and I'm I'm not good at bragging. I cannot brag about myself. You know, I'm awful at it. So actually, Hunter was the one who wrote the letter for us. Thank God he did it. But a week later, the agency called and said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but that birth mom did not select you. And I said, okay, that's fine. And they're like, but somebody else did. And I was like, well, do we need to write that person a letter? And they're like, no. She just selected you. And I was like, what? And so it just seemed like, and so she wanted to meet us. So we flew out to her state to meet her.
Wow.
We instantly connected. And so while she's pregnant, we kept in touch with each other, and Logan was born in September, and we flew out, and 12 hours later we were sitting there with Logan, and it just seemed like it just felt right. It felt like it was meant to be. It felt like it had to be that. And so at that point, Hunter and I thought we would be doing adoption for all of our future kids. Because
Right.
we're like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're doing. And so when Logan was 2 years old, we made the decision we're going to adopt again. So I literally for a whole week was filling out paperwork, and that's a whole other animal of its own. You feel like you got to sign your life away.
Wow.
And this is so silly, but I like Logan just took a nap on a weekend. And I was like, I think I need to take a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked at Hunter and I showed him the task and I said, I swear to you, I said this. I said, I don't know what to do now. And he just like looked at me going, well, you're asking me? And he was like, and he said, go take another test. So I ended up taking like 3 tests. And I was like, what is going on?
Oh, wow.
And so so as I was going through that first month or month and a half, I started feeling really bad. And I called my doctor and I told him I was pregnant. He was very, very shocked. And I said, I'm not feeling good. I think I might be miscarrying again.
Oh.
And I was at 6 weeks. He was like, you get in here right now. We've got to figure out what is going on. So Hunter comes with me and we go to get our ultrasound done. And before we could do anything, I said to the lady, I said, look, I think I'm miscarrying. We are fine. Because at that point, I mean, I had cried and cried and cried because I was like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. We're going through this again.
Yeah.
And I already prepared myself. Hunter prepared himself. And so the lady's like, okay. She goes, no, y'all have a baby. You guys are good. We were dead silent.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't say one word to each other. No, yay. No, nothing. And I just like looked at Hunter and I was like in such disbelief. And he says to the lady, okay, well, thank you. I'm just sitting there like, I bet this lady thought we were mad. Like, I think she thought we were mad about it, but we were just in so much shock.
Yeah, we're in sheer shock. And she thought she's like thinking, oh my gosh, maybe that's not his baby. Like, what?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like, and we're just sitting there and she's like, okay, well, we're going to go put you. We go in there and we're just still so silent. And my doctor, who has been with me for the longest time, walks in and he says, I don't get shut up very often. He's like, but I am speechless. He goes, what happened? And Hunter's like, I was hoping you would tell us what happened. Because, we're just in such disbelief,
Yes.
And so that whole pregnancy was nothing but a roller coaster. Like, we tell people that Davis is proof that God has a sense of humor because it was just like, it wasn't like it was an awful pregnancy, but it was just one thing after the other, after the other. They thought he had Down syndrome at one point. He doesn't, but they thought he did. We had to go through that whole spiel, which that was very, very hard for Hunter to have to go through. He took heart to that, which rightfully so. I mean, nobody wants anything, to be hard on anybody. Or any baby. And so, but yeah, and then I ended up having, I was really getting nervous when it was time to have Davis because I was like, I'm working as an engineer. I'm working with a bunch of men. I said to the doctor, what if my water breaks and I'm on a construction site? I said, what do I do? And he was like, this is your first pregnancy. It's not likely your water break. My water broke at 35 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, what the heck? So we go into the hospital because I'm in such disbelief that my water broke. I had no backpack. Like, literally, it was a cluster. And I go, they wanted to go check me out. And like I said, we didn't really know what was going on. So Hunter had Logan in the hospital with him. And so they wouldn't let Hunter come with me because he had to watch Logan. They wouldn't let Logan in that area. And this nurse is looking, God bless her. She's looking at my chart. She sees that I had the miscarriages. She sees Logan and she sees on my chart that this is my first pregnancy. And she's like, is that your son out there? And I said, yes. And like, she goes, but this is your first pregnancy? I went, yes. And like, I'm just like not
right
figuring out why she's asking me these questions. I'm like, I don't know why this is important right now. And she's like, is that your stepson? I said, no, that's my son. And she goes, well, is he your husband's biological son? I said, no. And I said, he's not biologically related to either one of us. And she's like, I do not understand how he is your son. And I looked at her and I'm like crying at this point. And I'm like, we adopted him. I said, can you please explain to me why this is important? And I'm like, I don't understand. And so still to this day, I don't know why she was asking me all these questions. But, and then the doctor's like, well, most women whose water break, they'll have the baby within 24 hours. They had to induce me at 72 hours because I never went in labor.
Wow.
And I'm like crying in the bed going, this wasn't part of the plan. And Erin, none of this was part of the plan. Because Erin, when did any of our plans actually work out with growing this family? And so, Davis is good, he's healthy, but I tell people we had the wildest ride in growing a family. But, as I think about it, God wanted us on this journey. I think God knew we could handle it. I think he knew that it would be one of those wild ones that we'll always remember, and we will.
Yes,
we will always remember this story.
Well, I thought you were going to say that nurse was finally like realizing like maybe it's important for Hunter to be there with you and would help out with your kid or something. But no, she was just like completely confused and felt like you needed to give her an answer. I don't know. I'm like, why you? That's no relevancy whatsoever.
None at all. I was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was some entertainment, I will say, but we're doing good. And, we have agreed that we're done having kids. And I think that's one thing that, it's kind of nerve-wracking to wonder, was Davis, with everything that happened with us before, was Davis just, is it that one time, or like, are we over that hump of infertility? I don't know, and I do think, there's a lot of women out there who my heart breaks for them because, they might have already had one child and they want another one and they cannot get pregnant. And I think those women get lost in the mix because people look at them and go, well, you should, like, I've legit have heard this, which is so sad, is, well, you have one child. You should be happy with that one child. And they're happy with that one child. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but their heart wants another one, And so, the infertility world sees those women like, they're in the trenches just with everybody else who doesn't have one, and so my heart really goes out to them. I actually have a friend who she is in that situation right now, and it's just killing her because she's like, I already had one. Why can I not do it again?
Yeah.
And so it's very heartbreaking, and but she knows that she agrees to. She's like, God has me on a plan. And, she said to me, she says, I don't know if that plan is right now. And she goes, but I don't think I'm meant to know right now. And I said, that's true. Sometimes. I do believe that too, as well. And we always go back to, Jeremiah 29, like, this is not to harm us. This is not to harm us, so it's to give us hope. It's to give us a future. And, it's just the path. It's just the journey. So,
gosh, and it is, what you're saying there, that tough situation where you have people that actually make comments like that. Oh, you should just be happy because you already have one child, without any empathy or understanding of what that mom is going through. And, and I have, like I mentioned to you before we started, I have probably 5, maybe 6 people that I know off the top of my head that have struggled with infertility. And one of those never had any success with any embryos at all. Another one actually ended up adopting 3 little kids at different times and growing her family that way. Another one had one child actually, she was pregnant with twins, lost one of the twins and had one of the little boys, and has been trying for another one and going through treatments and everything. And just what you mentioned, it's just, there's so much emotional stress attached to the physical and mental stress that you just don't know what somebody's going through. They're living their life as normally as they can, but they're also just trying to do whatever they can to create the right environment to get pregnant and go through everything to the T like they're supposed to. And I just thank you for being so open and sharing that, because, and it's not to say that if any mama listening to this has been considering fertility treatments, it's not trying to like talk you out of it, because it is a long road, but it's trying to let you know that, whatever you experience, it is going to be okay. And just kind of basically what you mentioned, like having that conversation with your partner to know that, you're going to accept whatever comes of this and not really truly tie your identity to the success of a transferred embryo or, a positive pregnancy test. And I think that as women, we tie so heavily our identity to being able to be a mom. And like some friends I know, they could care less about being a mom, and that is completely fine. And we're all made differently, but I just feel like the overarching theme is like what you just said, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't my body do this? Like those thoughts that you go through like that. And just, it sounds like you had to do a lot to mentally prepare yourself, and in your marriage too, that, you had to have a united front and be really open and honest to communicate with Hunter, because, I remember when I was pregnant with our first, and Ben was just, he wasn't even talking to me really about how he felt. He was very supportive of me and helping me to feel good in my pregnancy and whatever I needed. But I didn't know he was completely terrified that I would even die in labor. Like we did these birth classes leading up to pregnancy, and the teacher was like talking about different fears that people have. And she made everybody write down on a piece of paper their one fear about labor or about having a baby or whatever. She took all of them up. You didn't write your name on them. She went up there and she read them all out loud. And it was just amazing how many things people, like the different thought processes that people had.
Yes.
When we got to the one that said, I'm afraid that my wife is going to die during labor, I looked at Ben and I said, you wrote that one, didn't you? And he did.
Oh.
It was just like, he's, like you mentioned about Hunter being very chill, like on the outside, just like so calm, cool, and collected. But then, on the inside, he's like always thinking. He's like running stuff through his mind, and like, he's not trying to stress me out about it. But there's, I think that us as moms and as women and physically going through all these things with hormones and, trying to get pregnant, we kind of forget that our counterpart is going through their own roller coaster, even though they don't.
Absolutely.
That. Did Hunter have anybody that he went to try to talk to about it? Because I'm pretty sure he steered clear of you, trying not to make you have a meltdown. Because I feel like what you said, walking on eggshells.
He really didn't. When we were going through everything, he really didn't say too much, and it's actually kind of crazy thinking about it. But I remember just like questioning him a lot, like, "Are you okay with this? What are we doing?" Like, and I know, like when I had to go get my egg retrieval, he did tell me he was nervous because I've never done that before, so I don't know what's going to be expected.
Right.
But the one part of our story I didn't share with Davis is when after I had Davis, they had to roll me back into OR because I had a few complications. And when I got out, he said to me, "I'd never been more scared in my life." And I was just like, and of course, I was so like, they had me on so much stuff. I was just like, "You want to cut off my left arm? You go right ahead. I don't think I need it." So
I don't use that side anyway.
Yeah, whatever. Just let Hunter know I'm fine. And so he never really shared much until it was over with me. Because then once it was over, he knew I was okay. He knew he could share it with me. and I think one thing that Hunter did tell me too, which was, it's actually kind of really interesting from a guy's perspective, is he was saying like, when I'm pregnant, he goes, you had a head start. You had head starts with everything. I, he says, I was 9 months behind if you think about it.
Wow.
And so he kind of felt like that too with infertility stuff. Is like, he was like, well, I'm behind. She is already doing all this stuff, you know? And so I thought that was very interesting that he shared that perspective after the fact.
Almost like you had more experience being a parent than he did because your body was going through.
Yeah. You know, and so, and what was it when we adopted Logan, he was like, well, if you think about it, you and I started parents on the same day. And I was like, that's actually really, really deep for you to say.
That is. It is. Okay, Hunter.
Yeah, I like this. Let's go. You know, and so he never really shared much till after the fact when he knew everything was fine. Because, like I said, because he's so chilled and relaxed, when he stresses out, it's like, oh, and I know he's stressed out. Like, I need to get moving on something, you know, because but yeah, he kind of keeps a lot of it inside.
Yes. Well, I'm glad we got to talk about our spouse's perspective for a few minutes at the end, because I think they kind of get put on the back burner because there's a lot going on with us. So I feel completely fine with him trying to take care of me in that regard.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh gosh, this has been such an amazing talk. Thank you so much, Erin. I just am so grateful for your transparency and just putting it all out there, because I'm sure it's not easy to relive those emotions and going through those things, but I think you're 100% right that, you know, the reason that God had that in your life, you know, he brought Logan into your life through it. And just to be able to share your testimony with mamas that are hearing this right now. And it's so beautiful. So thank you for doing that for us.
Oh, no. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely.
This is such a subject that I hope, you know, one day it's just discussed so freely and, you know, it's everybody feels comfortable. So
absolutely. Do you have any, we've shared so much today. Do you have any parting words or thoughts or anything for mamas as we wrap things up?
I would say the best thing is give yourself some grace. It will be okay. It will be okay. And to quote Hunter, because we've been throwing spouses out there, you know, try not, even though it's so hard, try not to let it paralyze your life. Like, don't stop living, because you need those happy moments to get you through the hard stuff. And but give yourself grace is like probably one of the biggest things.
That is so good. So good. How can I pray for you, Erin?
Oh, goodness. You know, just to pray. I would love to pray for just the mamas out there. I want to pray for the mamas
who
do
that in agreement.
Just need some help and some support and love.
Yes. And I want to pray for you and for your platform and how you share, because it is so beautiful and it's so real. So, did you want to share your social media handles or anything that?
Yes. So if you guys like
listeners
follow along, you can definitely go find me on Instagram. I'm pretty much there majority of the time. And you can find me at Simply Carolina Ivory. And please feel free to send me a DM if you just want to chat about this subject. And I do want to say, if anyone is on Clubhouse, I know it's a new app, but there are tons of support groups on Clubhouse for actually tons of motherhood support groups. So women who are going through infertility, or, you know, women who go through postpartum, you name it, it is on there. So I definitely would recommend anybody who is interested in that to go check it out. There's definitely a lot of great women out there who are willing to share their story and support you as you need. So,
oh, that's awesome. I've heard of that, but I haven't tried to figure out. We joked about the tip for this meeting and just being able to get the podcast recorded. Yes. I'm just doing good to stay afloat with what I'm doing right now, honestly.
Understand. I completely understand.
Yes, girl. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Let me close out in a prayer together. God, thank you so much for my sister. Thank you so much for her just putting it all out there and letting us be able to glean from her experience and just hear her heart and her passion and just her surrender to you and your will and your plans and bringing into this world two beautiful boys that you've allowed her and Hunter to be parents to and to raise and to just pour out your love onto them. God, we just pray in agreement for the mamas listening to this that have had their own infertility struggles, the mamas that maybe haven't had their infertility struggles, but are trying to figure out how to support somebody they know going through that, Lord. I just pray that you would wrap your arms around them, whatever point in that journey that they're in, for even the mama that's considering whether this is something she wants to do or not. Lord, I just pray you'd speak to her heart. Just whisper your confidence and your peace into her that she is yours first and foremost, whether her body decides to bear a child or not. And I just thank you that we can trust in you and that your ways are good. They're higher than ours. Your will is good. It is for your purpose and your glory that we're here. And I just pray that you would just empower them with your Holy Spirit and just give them that truth that will sustain them no matter what comes at them in this life. We just thank you so much for this platform, this ability to communicate and to get together and to have this conversation as girls and women that love on each other and love you. And I just lift this up to you now and just pray that you'd help us to walk boldly in your truth and to share it fearlessly with others. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Good News Mama. If you did, please leave me a review on iTunes. A 5-star review is best, and hit subscribe. Share with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. Please email me at lynn@goodnewsmama.com. You know I love questions. I love feedback. I want to know what you want to know. We're going to talk about what means something to you. So let's hear it. Follow me on Instagram at Good News Mamas. That's mamas with an S. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Keep your head up, keep your heart humble, and share that good news.